Hey everybody, welcome to today's live stream. My name is JK and thanks for being here. What a weekend, am I right? Because yesterday Ferdinand did a live stream critiquing some animation, and today you get me doing some gesture drawing with you. So it's a jam-packed Animator Island weekend, and that's always a good thing. So again, welcome everybody. I'm going to be doing some gesture drawing today, but before we jump into that, a couple things. First of all, you'll see on the screen here we've got Patreon/Animator Island. In case you're unaware, let me get that plug out of the way. We do have a Patreon, and Ferdinand does some group mentoring there, as well as all of our additional content up on Patreon. So I highly recommend you check that out. If you can do some support for him, I know that he appreciates it, and it helps a lot to get more content produced and things like that. But I just figured I would mention it so you know for future. Secondly, kind of personal update. I've mentioned in the past been having some health issues for unfortunately quite a while now. They have become worse, unfortunately. So I've got a follow-up appointment with a doctor, and we'll see how things go. But not going well at the moment. High spirits though, because as my wife told me the other day, it's not going to get worse by being positive, right? So might as well be positive, have that peace that's been gifted to me. So I'm just all good. But unfortunately, still that health stuff going on. So I hope that I will be able to continue doing some regular live streams, but right now just struggling a bit. So just kind of an update there. All right, I'm going to fire up the iPad, and then we'll talk about one more thing before we jump into gesture drawing, and that is where we were last live stream. So last live stream, we were doing some tie-down drawings on an illustration that I was working on, and it looked a lot like this. It did not have any color at the time, but this is where I ended up with, after doing the tie-down drawing and then doing the inking and then doing the coloring and then a little bit of polish, but not a lot of polish, because what happened was at this point in the process, I just had enough. I gave it my all for a while. It was not working. I was trying to, what you might say, put lipstick on a pig. It was just, it was a failure of a drawing that I was desperately trying to save via polish. That never works, honestly. And I should have known better. So I just kind of got really frustrated and quit this one where it's at. I've moved on from it, and I wanted to show you after that point what I did. And let me pull up my references here. After that point, I was like, okay, I'm kind of mad about how badly that went. So I went in and I just started drawing out of frustration almost. I will turn off the these bits. Hang on. Show you where it started at. So I just threw down lines, and I went with totally just intuition, and I kind of went outside of my normal style, and I just wanted to do a better something than that last one that felt lifeless and I didn't enjoy. So I enjoyed doing this, and it turned out much better. Again, it's not my style. It's not generally what I would produce, but it turned out okay. I may go in and color this later, but I'm not sure. Overall, though, what I wanted to express with this is, if you do a drawing and it does not go well, don't freak out about it, because that happens, right? I mean, that happens to everybody all the time. All artists, no matter how many years they've been doing it, will have days like that. It's probably not, I mean, you could try and salvage it by tweaking things and polishing, and you should try to do it. Like I think I gave that last piece an extra 2 hours where I just sat there trying to fix things, and it just never came to fruition. I said it never resolved. Like if you had a piece of music, and the music usually has a resolution, this piece of art never resolved. So I started over, and that's a very good thing to be able to do. I know it's hard. At least it's hard for me. Some people probably enjoy that, but it's hard for me to just start over from scratch. I did though, and I'm happier, and Whether or not I ever finish this piece that's on the screen now, I'm more pleased with it than I was the last one. So I just wanted to kind of share that bit of failure because it's important to know that happens. Sometimes you fail at stuff. Okay, I got a lot of things, balls in the air right now. It seems like because I'm working on several pieces at once, which is not my favorite thing to do. I really prefer finishing a piece and then moving on. But right now, I have a bunch kind of open and in process. I could show you real quick. I'm working on this character design, which let me. You could see it a little bit. Nope, still can't see it very well. Let me up the opacity. There we go. I'm currently inking that one. This is a character design that I started because my wife said, "Hey, you don't draw enough guys." So long story short, there, I spent the first 30 years of my career drawing mostly male characters. It was just how it played out, and I wasn't very good at drawing girls. So I wanted to learn how to draw girls, and so I entered into this phase for the past probably maybe a year at this point where I was really focused on trying to draw girls well. So I got into the habit of pretty much only drawing female characters, and she was complaining. My wife was complaining. So I did this one mostly for her, just for fun and practice. And then this piece, going back to Pretty Girls, is another one I'm working on. I'm really pleased with how this one is turning out. And because of that, I'm scared to death I'm going to mess it up, which is another thing that you may experience in your own art journey. If you do a piece you really like, when you sit there and try and make it better and polish it and add extra detail and things, you're like, you can get scared that you're going to ruin it. Now, the good news is we're working digitally here on pieces like this, so I can always revert back to an old one, but that kind of tension is still there in the back. And I'd imagine that, if you're working on paper or on canvas, it would be so much worse because every single mark you make is almost undoable depending on the medium you're working on. But anyway, I really like how this one is turning out. I almost want to walk away from it now before I mess it up, but I'm going to go ahead and continue to play with it and see how it goes. I found this shape exercise, which actually I'm going to probably do a live stream in hopefully the coming weeks if all goes well health-wise. But I'm going to try and do a live stream based on this warm-up challenge that I got out of volume 20 of the Character Design Quarterly magazine. If you know that magazine, my library was fortunate to have a copy of that particular issue. Doesn't have any other copies of any other issues, so it was the only one I had access to, but I really enjoyed it. So I'm kind of looking into possibly subscribing to that magazine because it's very high quality. The information, at least in this one issue, was kind of like hit or miss, but the illustrations and the art was beautiful. So it's really interesting stuff. Anyway, this shape exercise was in there, so I'm probably going to do a live stream in the future on this exercise. If you're interested in joining in, stay tuned and make sure you subscribe to the channel wherever you're at so that you can keep up to date on that. That's also happening. I'll open this one up real quick. So these are two roughs that I found on Pinterest while I was doing one of my daily perusing of Pinterest. And I really love the feel, the expression, the quality, the appeal of these two drawings, but they are still very rough, as you can see. And one of the hardest things for me is to try and ink something to keep the life in it, but still make it clean, right? That's not something that I practiced heavily. So I pulled these two images from Pinterest, and as you can see, I said, ink these rough, see if you can keep the appeal. I'm going to go in on my own time and see if I can ink these cleanly and still maintain the appeal of those two amazing artists that they put into these character drawings. So I think that'll be an interesting exercise. I've never tried to ink someone else's work before, as far as I know. So it's a new experience. And speaking of that, this past month or two even has been this exploration for me of just trying random stuff. And it's been fascinating. And I've renewed my interest in doing art by doing these little experiments and this just random things. I'm really enjoying it. And speaking on those lines as well, this is the last one, and then we'll get to drawing. I'm doing some fan art of this character named Princess Peppina, I believe. She's a pepperoni princess, or pizza princess, I guess. Anyway, as one of the people that I know from Discord and Twitter and such, that I really dig this character. It's just fun. A little bit reminds me of Princess Daisy, who is one of my favorites. So I decided I was going to do some fan art just for fun and practice. So this is the rough that I have so far. Turn up the opacity a bit. This is the rough I have so far. Actually, this is the tie down drawing on top of the rough, and then I'll go back and ink it and hopefully do a little illustration of the princess there. So lots of stuff. All right, one more thing, and then we'll continue. A friend on Discord was working on some drawing stuff and asked me to kind of critique some things. And so this is me pointing out some examples of checking angles and proportions when you're trying to do a drawing of a drawing. And so as you can hopefully see there on the screen, the angles of the one that he was working on versus the original are slightly off. And that was what was causing a lot of grief in the drawing process. So it's good to check your angles of lines and things when you're working. If you're, doing a study or something like that, which is what this person was doing. Okay. With all that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get to some gesture drawing today. So if you want to join in, by all means do so. I'll probably talk through some of the things that I'm doing, but I'll also be quiet a bunch, and it's really good practice to do. So I definitely recommend it. A couple things that I kind of came to conclusions about while I've been working recently is that, number one, I really love the process of rough, like a very rough drawing, and then doing a tie down on top of that, which is a very animation kind of thing. And I don't know why it took me 40 some years to figure out that process suits me so well, but I did now finally. So what I'm going to do for these gestures is I'm going to start with a very rough, and then I'm going to go on top of it, and I'm going to add in some lines that are cleaner, that hopefully define the forms a little better and pop things forward and just. So I'm while I'm doing these drawings, if you see that they're off or I'm doing them very roughly, that's the reason. That's part of this process that I'm currently trying out. I'm trying on a new pair of shoes when it comes to this process, and so far it's gone very well. So I'm working in Procreate. I've mentioned that in the past, and I'm using a brush called Tinderbox, which I have labeled as Just Pleasant, and it's a brush that I really like. I have the opacity turned down all the way into the 20s. That'll be good for my initial. I'm sorry, I was checking over on the chat, and I saw that Quantified said, why dinosaurs can't eat fish? And immediately that was all I could think about. And apparently the answer is because they dead. So there you go. Should have seen it coming. I appreciate that bit of levity. All right, so we're going to jump into drawing. And I've started a new layer, and so let's get started. So the process that I use is a modified version of the Youssef method, which comes from the book, or not just book, but it's this book called Movement and Form by Samantha Youssef. And she is one of my mentors, and I really dig her method. So that's kind of what I use, but it's a modified version. It's not her exact method, which is probably not necessarily wise. I think hers is probably going to be better than anything I pull out of nowhere, but that's okay. This works for me. And so that starts with typically a kind of head or skull shape, and then your main line or your kind of line of action. Now with this pose, it's tricky because because she's grounded to the seat, that means that the main line kind of ends at the seat. But we could also, if we wanted to, go with a main line that was kind of like this, which is actually pretty nice too. So I'll probably do that. But I'm going to stick with working very rough here, and I'm going to move stuff around as needed, and I'm just going to try things, and then we'll go back and fix stuff up. So from there, we can find angles of things like the shoulders and the hips. Now the hips here are kind of hidden, so that's going to be a little trickier, but that's okay. And we'll put in the torso and the pelvis, which is going to be something along. Again, this is going to be tricky because so much is hidden, but I think because of the depth and perspective, we're going to look at something like that. And I've already run out of room because we need to get the arms off of here to be up this way to the fan. And this arm kind of comes forward in space. So we want to make sure we get that foreshortening in, and then the hand comes up like this. And then we've got our leg here, which ends at the conclusion of our kind of line of action sort of thing. So this line doesn't actually mean anything other than being a frame of reference for that sort of foot to conclude at. And we'll get that in. And then the other leg comes up here. We've got a bit of a gap, and we'll get the knee in there. Leg comes down. I really like the dynamism of this particular model. It drives me nuts that she has the face mask on, because you get a lot less expression in the face because of that. I wish that wasn't there, but I mean, I understand it is what it is. But there's such fluidity and good movement in this particular model that I really appreciate the work that she does. So, okay. So there's kind of my very early rough. That's just kind of what it is. I can see that I've made some pretty significant errors if I was doing kind of a study, because the body is much further away from the legs than it should be, and my proportions are kind of off. But that's okay, because I'm just doing a gesture drawing and I'm trying to capture the mood and the action. So I'm going to leave it and kind of just let it be, and then I will go in and kind of put in more detail and work from there. This is where I'm trying to concentrate a little bit more, hence why I've gone quiet. So I'm kind of going in and I'm putting in those forms, and I'm determining, where things are supposed to be and how we need them to flow together and things like that. This is really a tricky arm because of that foreshortening, but we'll make it work. And why not get the fan in there? Normally I don't include props, but whatever, I'll do it today. When I'm doing a gesture, my intention usually is to take those gestures and then have a reference file that's just all of the gestures that I've ever done or have done recently. And then when I want to do a drawing, I can go into that file and I can pull a pose that I already thought through. And then I'll take that pose and turn it into an illustration. So I'm kind of building my own reference for future that's not a direct photo reference, but is reference of my own art. All right, so we got a question. Let's tackle it. Bro Slayer 4/2 says, question: when you do a rough of the head for gesture or sketches in general, do you just have it be a circle with lines showing the face direction, or do you also make the face more angular and or face shaped? Terrific question. So the answer is both, because it depends on, and this is just my personal process, it depends on what I'm doing. So for example, I'll just go up here for a second. If I'm doing kind of a character portrait, right? A sort of, if I'm just trying to do kind of the head and bust of a character, let's say, I will usually do a process that's something like this. So I'll get some things in, I'll do my base forms, I will kind of figure out stuff as I go. And then once I'm kind of at that state, then I'll start going in and I'll actually put in face shape, kind of like this, based on the forms that I have and things like that. And this is an ongoing process where I'm going to keep tweaking things and keep messing with stuff. But this is generally where I'll start and where I'll just kind of my process for it. So it stays this way, where I still have that kind of circle head shape with the crossing lines. That's always where I start, because in just a few strokes of the pencil, you can define head tilt, you can define where they're looking, you can say so much about a character from that. But from that point, then you can go in and you start carving in where the actual details are. Now, that's for a character like this. If, on the other hand, I want to do some, whoops, just stick this on the side. If I want to do some strong-jawed male character, I will often start with the same sort of thing, but instead of carving in like this, I will add on. So I'll still do my carving, but I'll add on maybe a strong jawline like this instead. And then I'll kind of figure out proportions as I go. And but I still start with that general idea. So you can either carve into a shape like I did with the first one here, or you can add on to a shape, and both of those are possible options for you. Now, all that being said, hang on one sec. Come on. Select that and delete it. I kind of like this super rough drawing that I have here on the side, so I'm keeping it. I'll just put it over here for now. All that being said, when I'm doing strictly gesture drawings, I generally don't have faces on any of them. I will stick with the divider lines and I'll stick with the sphere. Sometimes I'll go in and I'll add, a jawline or something. Sometimes I'll even add kind of where the facial features would be if I want to. But most of the time for a gesture, I am not concerned with any of the details to the head, because my goal is to capture what's happening as the full figure. When I'm doing full figure gestures, I'm not concerned at all with the face. I don't know that that's the best way. I don't know that I'd recommend that, because if you can get a gesture drawing with an excellent simplified face too, it may be much better than if you do it this way. But I find that I like to forgo the face, so that later when I take one of these poses as my own reference for an illustration, I'm not already leading in a certain direction. So if I gave this character kind of like this intense look, right? When I was going to use it as reference, that would get in my head, and then I wouldn't be able to change it as easily. But if I keep it a blank slate, right? All of these are kind of blank slates. Then it allows me to go plug in whatever reference I want to use kind of after the fact, or not reference, but the emotion and stuff like that. So I'm going to shrink this down a bit just so we can get it clear on the page here. And now that I did that, I'm going to up the opacity. Well, yeah, Yeah, I'm going to up the opacity a little bit. So now we're somewhere in the 50% range. Oh, Maria's here. Hey, Maria, good to see you. Seems like it's been a while. I'm going to up the opacity, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to kind of do that, what I said, tie down drawing on top, because it'll help me to define lines and forms a little bit better. And I'll feel better about how I leave things for future by adding in those little extra details after the fact. So that's what I'm kind of doing here. I'm feeling out lines to see where they belong and where they don't. And then I'll be able to have a clearer picture for when I go back and use this as reference in the future. And so this is sort of a little bit, I mean, it's a new intentional process for me, because prior to this, I didn't really do this sort of extra step. And I found that it really helps my process when I do this extra step. So that's why I'm kind of trying it out and seeing how it goes. And so far it's gone pretty well. So I dig it. So this would be wrapped around, and it's another one of those things where it lets me be looser and more carefree in a sense, because I'm not married to the original lines that I put down, which means that I can kind of make more mistakes early on, if that makes sense, which I appreciate and helps me a lot. So now I'm going to go back, talking about that previous question, I'm going to actually go back and mess with the skull shape a little bit, because I'd like to get that a little bit better proportioned. So that's where it's useful to go back, in my opinion, and change some stuff. Got our hand here, and this hand here, kind of thumb comes up here and that goes there. But so this extra step kind of cleans things up a little bit. It defines the lines a little bit more. I've done it all on one layer, so it's not like a traditional tie down drawing where I would do it on multiple layers. But I think it works rather well, and it definitely helps my process a little bit. So I appreciate it. And then the last step that I usually do is I'll lower the opacity again, and I'll just kind of go in and put some additional shading in for areas that are kind of behind, just to make sure that I can see what's in front and what's behind and that sort of thing. And this really helps me to kind of get a feel for where things are at, and just adds a little bit more to the drawing, in my opinion. I prefer it anyway. So that just kind of pops it off the page a little bit. This is rough. This is loose. This is got some issues, but that's okay, because we're just doing gestures, and we can move on to the next. So again, I'll drop the opacity down a little bit, and we'll start with the head. Now, in this case, I kind of automatically put in the skull shape because of what I learned from that last one. I realized that I was going to want that extra little bit of jawline for the character, or this particular model. And if we're looking at line of action here, I think we're kind of getting this swooping line is going to be our best bet. So we'll go ahead and put that in. And this one is cool because you got a side torso, which is always fun. And then we've got the pelvis this way, and foot will be down there. Got our back leg in here-ish, and then our front leg comes up and over. I want to watch to see where We want to look at negative space as well as positive space. That really helps us to get our proportions right. So I'm looking as I'm drawing and putting down some lines and things. I'm trying to determine where the negative space is, the area between shapes, so that I can make sure that my angles are right and my proportions are generally closer to what I'm looking for. And then here too, we can see where the knee hits here and where the foot hits here. And we want to look at that on our own drawing and see, is it similar? Is it different? Do I want to alter things as we go? It's just good to keep looking, bounce your eyes around to see where things should be. Now, as tricky as that last arm was, this is so much worse or better, depending on how you look at it, because she's got crazy foreshortening. But we'll get that in there, and then we'll mess with it later. We'll tweak things as we go. I'm not too concerned about it right now, but it's good to kind of keep that in there in the beginning stages. All right, and then the other arm comes out back. Now we've got that fan again, but we're gonna probably skip the fan for this one. And that arm is tiny by comparison. This is a tricky pose to draw, but it's also really, what's the word? Enthralling. Like it's a fun one to try because it's difficult, but it's doable. But you're like, this is hard, and I need to really think things through because there's so many different aspects. Like this leg is shifted towards the camera. I can't even really draw that. It's like you draw the arrow, like I can't even draw the arrow coming at us, but the leg is shifted towards the camera, which is very interesting decision. I don't know if it was a conscious decision or this is just how that pose happened to be, but it's really interesting because that's tricky to capture. You kind of need this extra line in here, or it's tricky to capture that and then have it look right because this foot is going to be gigantic, but the leg is, I don't know, this is a very interesting pose. I dig it. I really, really appreciate the, like I said, dynamism that this model provides. It's just really interesting stuff. That's another thing. If you find yourself either struggling to do art or to practice things like gesture drawing, find poses that hook you, that make you really want to try and draw them. Because if you're working from just dull, lifeless, stiff poses, then you're not going to have any interest in doing it. Or you might, and if you can, that's great. But if you're struggling, try to find some poses that are more dynamic because it'll just be more fun to do, and that can really help. So, all right, that gets kind of in there. Heel is up here. There we go. All right. Maria has some comments. Let's see. Says, at Ferdinand's encouragement, I've been playing with sketching characters from different angles, specifically looking up at them and trying to understand the foreshortening. That's definitely a really good thing. And so it continues, it's really interesting, as always, what your head wants you to see as opposed to what you do see. And that's definitely, if there's one thing it's going to help you most as an artist, is that learning that difference between what your brain says to you that you should put down and what your eyes say to you should put down. And what I mean by that is your brain wants to simplify things down, and it knows this is a human being. So it's like, okay, that means that it has a certain length of arm. But in this image, look at the length of arm. The length of arm is like this. And even though the brain interprets that as coming toward you, it doesn't want to draw it that way. Like it will tell you, oh no, you need to make it longer. So if I wasn't just putting down what was on the screen, I would want this arm to kind of come out like this and then come into the hand position. And that's not right, according to this pose. So that's a really good point, Maria. And yeah, it's really interesting when you can see the difference between what your brain wants you to put down versus what's actually there. And Bro Slayer says, I think my issue is I'm lazy and barely even take out my drawing tablet. I hear you. That is me too. Me too. I am lazy and I don't do it enough. The good news is now that I've learned this new art of exploration, where I'm just trying stuff and I'm not worried so much about like final product, it's helped so much for me to be less lazy. And the other thing is you can just, especially with the iPad, you can just open it up and do a little bit, and then, put it away. And every little bit that you can do really, really helps. So I definitely recommend, especially if you know it. If you know that that's your issue with the laziness thing, see what you can do to combat that. Like, because there's stuff you can put systems in place so that you will be able to fight yourself and win. I could see, we were just talking about the foreshortening thing. I could see I made this hand way too big because it's barely in the background there. Right, barely in the background. So we're going to get rid of this extra bit. This is a really interesting pose to draw. I definitely recommend it. Oh, and Hailey's here. And Shweta is here. I think that I pronounced that right. It's just a nice drawing. Thanks. I appreciate it. All right. So we've got our kind of fundamental down here. And what I'll do then is I will go in and start with the kind of cleaner version. This one is already kind of tied down pretty nicely, but as you can see from the one above it, I did go back in with this thicker, darker line. So we'll do that. I think maybe this time I'm going to put in my shadows first. Sometimes I find that helps me to do the other lines better. So let me go ahead and put that in first. And this kind of comes up over here. All right. That should do. Okay. So with that out of the way, then I can go back in. I'll up this to somewhere in the 50s. I think I hit 60, but that's fine. And I'll go in and kind of tweak some stuff to add a little more detail so that when I'm using it for reference in the future, and I can see this hand is significantly off, but that's okay. Then I'll have a little more to work with. And this arm is fascinating. So we've got like this goes up into here and then into the shoulder. Man, that is crazy hard to draw. That is really rough. Really difficult thing, but really interesting. This line in here, I want to keep this kind of, I'm going to put in just a little bit of cross hatching so I can keep track of that for future. Now we've got our foot in here that's really big because it's coming toward us. I don't know if this will work for everyone. This idea that I'm showing you with the whole kind of tie down drawing on top of your rough drawing, but give it a shot because in a sense, and this may be a good one for you there, Bro Slayer, if you're feeling lazy, this is kind of nice because it's almost like I'm tracing at this point, right? The hard work is done, and now I'm just enjoying the final line, not even final lines, but like carving out the stuff that needs to be there. And it's much more fun for me to do this part. Like I'm enjoying this tremendously, whereas the really challenging figuring stuff out, that one I didn't enjoy as much. It's still enjoyable, but it's a different kind of enjoyment. Like this, I'm having fun. I could just do this for hours, where I'm just finding the lines in the bigger lines. And I really like that. Okay, so I'm going to do some quick things here because I see that I have some issues and I want to fix those issues because they're important issues to fix. So this hand actually should probably be out here a little bit more, which will give me more room to put in this weird arm that's kind of like this tube shape outward. But that's where that should probably be. So I'm going to go in and correct that. And if you see something major like that that needs correction, it's better to go in and put it in. Now that's still not completely right, because if you look here, let me change my color of my brush to something you can see. If you see right here, this angle of the head and the hand, mine is not at that right angle. So by changing that a little bit, I've messed with a bunch of other things that probably need fixed. But because again, this is a gesture drawing and I'm going to just let it be what it is, I'm not super worried about that. So I'm okay with how things are going here, in spite of the fact that it's not perfect, because I'm just kind of going with the feel of the pose and things like that. Got a couple things in the chat. Let me check. Alien Slug King's here. How's it going? Good to see you. Dota Bros says, same feeling when I do the line art. Oh, there's an updated one that has the full thing. Same when you do the line art phase, and just put it on Spotify and do some line art. Yeah. I've always said that if you're going to listen to music or you're going to have any sort of distraction on, the best time to do that is when you're inking, or when you're doing line art, or when you're finalizing or you're polishing and things like that, because you don't have to think as much during those points. You don't have to give your 100% attention to it as much, because a lot of the hard work is already done. And that's another reason, and I've said it in the past, but let me say it again because it's been a while. One reason you want to work from live reference rather than drawings most of the time. I mean, it helps to do both, but most of the time you want to work from live reference or photo reference, because the hard work hasn't been done yet. You're the one who has to make the decisions about where to put stuff. And when you work from an existing illustration, most of the hard work is already done by the previous artist. So by all means, do some studies from existing artwork. That's fine. But do not neglect your drawing from life or from photographs, because it's really, really, really important. It's going to hone your heart or your artistic intuition way more than just copying existing drawings. So work from live. I know it can be a pain. It is for me too, but it's still worth it. Okay. So here we have some characters underwater, which I thought was really fun because it lets you get some weirder poses and things. We're at 47 minutes, and I can tell that I'm starting to, I'm both starting to hit a groove and also getting a little tired. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one at least, or at least a rough version of this one. And then I'm going to probably call it a day for today. Maria says, reference from life makes me think of a 19th century tradition where women were discouraged from using live reference. Interesting. For drawing. That is very interesting. I was not aware of that bit of history, but there you go. That's yeah. I mean, when you think about it, throughout human history, we've made great errors in judgment like that because reference is so important. It's so important, and you're not using it to copy. You're just using it to refer to. You're using it as a foundation to build on top of, and everything you draw is from some sort of reference, even if that reference is your imagination. You're using reference because it's something that you're thinking about that you've probably seen or a collection of things you've seen. So by all means, use reference. It's really good stuff. It's really important. Just don't copy it directly. We actually have an Animator Island article on reference, proper use of reference. So I'll try and remember to link to that in the description after the live stream is over. All right, so this one, we've got these big goggles on, so that's going to make the face very difficult. That's okay. And we'll get our main line in with this, and the hips are probably a little more extreme. We'll get our torso in, and then our kind of box for the and start putting in now. Obviously, this photo is cut off, so I have to have a good enough grasp of human anatomy to finish what's happening off the edge here. The good news is it's not cut off much, so she's going to have her foot pointed like this, and I can tell, and I'll be able to finish that. But this is where it's very useful to have that grasp of what really is, so that if you come across a reference that's not complete, you can go ahead and add in the details that are necessary. So I have two options here. I can either do this single kind of figure, right? Or I can add in the other in the same drawing, which I kind of like the flow of everything. But because I'm going to use these as reference for future, I'll probably disconnect them and do them separately. Because then I'll be able to use them separately instead of just as one illustration, which wouldn't, it wouldn't be bad to have it as one illustration either, but I think that it'll work better as two. All right, so we'll get that in there. I'm going to put in the bottom of the rib cage just for my own reference purposes. And then we would have the box probably like this for the, and I can see it's getting messy here. I'm working too heavy. So what I think I might do is I'm going to drop the opacity down on my eraser, and I'm just going to knock this back a little bit. In the old days, before we had digital, we would literally use a kneaded eraser to knock down drawings. So what you would do is you would do, your drawing on paper, and then do I have a kneaded eraser? No, it's somewhere around here. You would have this eraser that you could knead. It was like this stretchy eraser, almost like silly putty, but it was an eraser. And you would very lightly go over the entire drawing, and it would knock down your lines so that it was lighter. And then you would go back over and clean things up and stuff like that. So I just kind of did a digital version of that right there, where I lowered the opacity, I knocked that down a little bit, and then I can go back over it, and I can put things where they belong and fix them so that I've got them where I want them. All right. Put that line in and get a nice straight in here. We've got that knee. This has some really nice lines too. I mean, just like this line here, and then this form, and then this line. That's really, really fun and nice to draw. I really like a lot of the forms in here. It's got angles that you can tell where the angles are, which is great for an artist because you're like, oh, it's almost like they did the work for me. And then you can just focus on appeal and things like that. And it's very pleasant. So I dig it. That in there, we got a straight there. Now this is neat because we got this really nice curve on this side. This is just a beautiful pose. This is fun to draw. I'm really enjoying this one. And I think partially that's because I warmed up beforehand, right? We did all those other drawings. And so I'm finally hitting that groove, and it's a great pose. So like both of those on top of each other make it really pleasing to do this drawing. Like it's just fun. And I don't always have fun drawing. I don't know about everybody else. For me, sometimes drawing is just hard work. And I'm like, I don't really want to do this. But sometimes you do hit that groove and it's like, oh, this is why I do it. I remember now. This is a joy. So we get the arm in there. And then we've got kind of some foreshortening going on with this hand. It's a weird hand. I'd probably change this hand. I would change this hand in like a final drawing because it's weird and it's not working for me, and it's not a great silhouette of a hand. So I would change that one. It makes sense in this particular image because she's swimming, so she's using her hand in that way. But really, you'd want this hand to be more flowing. So maybe something like this, and then some fingers down here, and like this would be a more elegant, I think, hand to put on this pose. If you could see where I'm coming from, I think that would feel nicer to me. And actually, you know what? It's a gesture drawing, so let's put it on. We're just gonna stick that hand on there and deal with it. Reference. There we go. There. Yeah, actually, it's not quite in the right spot, but yeah. And that's the beauty of things like reference drawing or gesture drawing. If something is gonna improve it, go ahead and add it. Who's gonna stop you? We got a bunch of comments. Let me run through a few. Maria says, when I was growing up, there was a whole bunch of different erasers, all kinds of different actions. My favorite was a wheeled eraser with a brush on the other side to clear the drawing. That is super cool. I have never heard of that, but I dig it. That is something to look at. Let me grab I think I have a few erasers here. Don't know where that kneaded eraser is. I should have one around. It's not like I never use them. Anyway, so I have this. Here, I'll swap views for a second. I have this Mars plastic white eraser. This is really clean eraser. It's good for detail work because you got these very sharp corners and stuff. I have this, which I have kept since high school. It's a little monkey eraser. I've never actually used it as an eraser. It just keeps me company on my desk, and I just put it there, and it makes me smile with this angry little monkey. I have and I don't know where these erasers are. I guess I don't do enough work on paper anymore. I have this like triangular eraser, which is one of my favorites. It's rounded, so it's almost like it's a triangle, but it's rounded off, and it's a great eraser because you have so many different edges to it. It's one of my favorites. Really dig that eraser. Kind of a detour from what we were talking about, but that's fine. Put that there. What else we got? Alien Slug King comments, didn't know there were so many types of erasers. It's true. ASK says 2D artists don't need them. I mean, I guess all artists still need them. So I would say that, the more we work digitally, the less we need actual erasers, right? But there's really something to be said for still working in physical form. There really is. Like I still find it at times more comfortable to work with a Prismacolor black pencil, which I've got a bunch of Prismacolor pencils here, but none of them are black. But I still love working with just a plain old Prismacolor pencil and newsprint. It's just it's nice. It's just nice. So I think they still need them, but whatever. ASK says, wait, did you say deal with it reference? Wish I could say that in my animation class. Yeah, you won't get away with that in class. But once you graduate, you can go ahead and say that all you like. Just gotta be careful. Yeah, and then he says, I guess if you reach a stage where you know what you're doing, you can say that and get away with it. That's a super, super important point. It's true. That's why, and I hate to harp on it, but I have to because I wish I would have listened decades ago. That's why life drawing is so valuable to you, because you'll be able to learn so well that you're like, deal with it reference, and you can get away with it. But until you grasp that, until you really know your stuff enough to just pull off that kind of free form, it'll plague you because you'll be riffing on stuff, but it won't be right. It really is like music in that sense. If you've ever learned any sort of instrument, once you achieve a certain level of competency with your instrument, you can just try stuff and it'll work a lot of the time. Not always, but a lot, because you'll have the fundamentals down. And it'll be more of a joy to play with and just try things, and it's great. So I definitely recommend that you keep at it, regardless whether it's art and animation or whether it's a musical instrument. It's really good to practice those fundamentals to the point where you know so much about them that you could just play with stuff and it will work because you know what you're doing. And I'm not going to say that I've mastered that, but I've at least gotten to the point where I'm ready to let go of trying to do it without the continual practice of live reference. Because when I was younger, and oh my gosh, if my old art teacher was here, she would tell you how stubborn I was. Oh my gosh, I don't know how she put up with me. I have this one professor in particular that I was just, oh my gosh, I was such jerk. I would be like, I don't need all that crap. I could just do it on my own, blah blah blah. Oh, so stupid. And I would point out things like, I remember this one time we went to a museum and they had all these roughs of literal Simpsons cells. So old days of animation, you did a drawing for every single frame, right? Just like regular 2D animation today, but it was an actual drawing. So they had the roughs of all of these episodes of The Simpsons that you could just pick up and flip through and everything. And it was amazing. But anyway, I found this one that was this really wonky pose of Homer. And I picked it up and I took it over and I was like, look at this. Tell me you need anatomy. Look how cool this drawing is. And you don't need anatomy. And she just kind of stared at me because I'm sure now that I know my stuff a little better, I'm sure she was thinking, you stupid, stupid kid. But it was the reason that animator could break Homer so much for that particular drawing was because they had such a mastery of the fundamentals that they could pull it off, and it worked, and it was great. But as a kid, I was dumb, and I'm sorry, Professor. I kept in touch with her over the years, and years later, I went to her and I was just like, I just want you to know that I appreciate all the things you taught me and how dumb I was. And I'm sorry how dumb I was because I was really, really dumb. But you live and learn. Okay. All that rambling. I appreciate you guys putting up with my rambling. I'm going to do my little color portion of this. We'll put in a shadow there. Why not? Because I feel like it. That's not correct. There we go. And then we will move on to that last little bit of tie down line work. And actually, I'm concerned I'm going to break this by doing it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then we'll be done for today. If anybody has any other thoughts, questions, concerns, or anything, feel free to ask away now, because we're going to wrap up in a few minutes after I finish these lines. And next time, I'm going to remember to put a glass of water next to the desk, because I keep forgetting to do that. And I could really use some while I'm talking so much. I am very pleased with how this one turned out. So here's another example. If you look at her knee here, it's very round on the outside, but I've put in this kind of line. That's another thing that until you, and it's not exactly right, but I like where the line is. And so I'm okay with putting it there. It adds this extra visual element. It really should be down here more, but that's okay. I can kind of, I'm letting it be. And that's the sort of thing that why you want to keep practicing and working at different aspects of anatomy and things, because it will dramatically help you as you go. It's interesting how her, I guess there is a bit of a form there. Anyway, it's just, her arm is kind of, her shoulder is pulled back, which is interesting. And then it kind of comes forward with the arm. It's just a really interesting bit of. All right, good deal. And then I kind of will put in maybe a little bit more of a box for the skull shape here, just to tweak some proportions a little bit. Put in that. Good shape. That was not right. Put that in. This hand is not my favorite hand here. Come on, iPad, stop messing with me. I would probably maybe bring the pinky finger out a little bit. I don't know, but something needs changed with that hand. Whenever I would go back and use this for future reference, I would probably fix that a little bit more. Okay, so there we go. Get a little bit of head back in there. It's going to bother me. Okay, there we go. So we've got those drawings for today, and didn't even get to the other side of the page, but that's okay, because it happens sometimes. I hope that it was enjoyable for everybody else as well, and that you picked up some tips. And next time, if you didn't this time, you should definitely do the drawing alongside. So if you find yourself being lazy, use this as an opportunity, because I'm lazy too. And that's why I do these live streams, because I'm like, well, if I do it live, then at least it's an extra update for Animator Island, and maybe I can pass along some things as we go. Maria says, thanks. Lee says, okay. So good deal. I'm glad folks enjoyed it. I don't know when the next live stream will be. I could tell you it won't be tomorrow. Oftentimes I will try and do one on Mondays. For me anyway, I can't speak to Ferdinand, though I think he's probably going to be busy too. No live stream tomorrow, but definitely later in the week, as long as my health holds out, I'm planning to do another one, whether it be live streams, whether it be gestures, or maybe we do some inking or coloring or something. I'm not sure, but we'll get something in, and we'll go from there. Hopefully also by next time, I will have almost no hair, because I need a haircut so badly. Like, it's down to my shoulders. It really needs done. So next time I should have less hair as well. All right, that's kind of rambling. Have a great day, everybody. I hope that this week is one that's brilliantly productive and full of peace and joy, and we'll catch you later in the week. Bye, everybody.